The Orlando Magic have the opportunity to do something very, very funny. But in all serious, guys, coaches and GMs are dropping like flies, and these are in playoff teams, not just play-in teams. The Memphis Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins last week. Mike Malone and Calvin Booth have now also been fired. So today we're going to be talking about what is the job security of those two men right there, Jamahl Mosley and Jeff Weltman. What does this team need to do going into the play-in, in the play-in, and potentially in the playoffs to make sure that these two keep their jobs coming in 2025 and 2026? Now, it's a very speculative video. Tonight's a back-to-back. We're going to be covering that as well as some post-game comments from last night. Trae Young said something really cool about Paolo Banchero, and also the Osceola Magic are in the G League Finals. So we're going to be talking a little bit about everything going on, all the news. But this is something I talked about yesterday that I think is really interesting to touch on because the Magic aren't exactly overachievers this year, even with the injuries that have piled up. But, to each their own. I know some people might disagree. But first, guys, you already know the business. This is Magic Digest. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. We got these new statistics in. It's tax season. Had to file it. Subscribed 45% of you who are watching these videos regularly. Thank you so much. That's an big upgrade from 25%, trying to get to 1,000. We're only about 40 away now, so let's keep it pushing. Thank you guys so much for the support. Okay, so yesterday, what kind of inspired this was obviously Jamahl Mosley was asked about what is going on in the NBA right now. Everybody's getting fired, and he made a little bit of a comment on the Mike Malone and Calvin Booth firing, but specifically Malone. It feels all too familiar that we're saying that as of late. It makes you look at yourself as a coach individually because you have to reflect back. Now, this quote does go on for a very long time, but just to give you general context, he's talking about a lot of the coach of the year candidates being fired or coach of the year winners being fired. And when you look around the league, he says you can't really tell exactly what's going on in each and every organization. You're focused on yourself, but you know that the accolades usually speak for themselves. These coaches are successful, and it's not like these aren't surprises in general, but when you do see it, you have to look at yourself. It's inevitable to say that. So I thought it was really interesting, and the full quote is available, I'm sure, somewhere. So if you want to see it, it's really it's good stuff. It's good stuff. So Mike Malone and Calvin Booth were fired yesterday by the Denver Nuggets. They were the 4th seed yesterday. We'll see exactly where they end up at the end of this season because I know the West race is super, super tight. But essentially, they're about 3 or 4 games away from the postseason, and the Memphis Grizzlies made a very similar move by just firing their head coach about 7 to 9 games, if I can remember correctly, away from the postseason. So this is making no sense. But these organizations are tearing everything down. They're overhauling because they feel like they're not achieving what they should be. They feel like what they're doing right now is not up to snuff. Denver's got Jokic. They got the best player in the world, at least in my opinion, and it's something not working. There's a rift. There's Mike Malone not playing his guys, all this other stuff. This is something that I honestly think that we can look at for Jamahl Mosley. We always say we want him to play the young guys, or is Weltman happy with the players that he's putting out there, or is Weltman doing enough at the deadline? Is this team overachieving or underachieving? What do they need to do? I think there's a very similar dynamic that could potentially be going on here with the Orlando Magic. Do you see, if this team flames out in the play-in, Mosley coming back and Weltman coming back? I think Weltman's job is safe, honestly, right now, just the way that this season has turned out. Seeing this team play some pretty good basketball towards the end of the year. But if you're Jamahl Mosley, who, a lot of these coaches are on a much shorter leash, I feel like, than some people in the front office, could he potentially be fired? This team pretty much wrapped up the 7th seed. I'll explain that in just a second from last night's win over the Atlanta Hawks. But what if this team doesn't make it to the playoffs? They don't end up going to play Boston or Cleveland. They lose out and they don't make the playoffs. Is Mosley fired then? I mean, based off of what everything is going, what we see with a guy like Taylor Jenkins, yeah, he probably will be. That is way too low of a bar for this team. Or what if we don't get a single game off the Celtics or the Cavs, right? The Cavs made a move, changed their coach last year, and they've obviously made some moves to their roster, but nothing too crazy. They re-signed a lot of the guys, and they essentially ran it back, and they've been, worlds better than they were last year. Is that something that the Magic would consider doing at that point if they can't take a game off the Cavs, who then, exploded? We felt like we were on the same level last year. Maybe so. But also, if this team somehow has an upset, I think both those guys are safe, right? So it's like a very close margin, a handful of games towards the end of the year that are really deciding it. Is that a smart way to go about it? I don't think so. Probably not, especially when you look at some of these teams, right? Like the Memphis Grizzlies are falling, essentially, like, are free falling in the Western Conference in the standings, and Denver probably about to do the same thing. Because when you clean house like that, I don't know how that could possibly help your playoff run going forward. But that'll be the question for the day. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think it would take for Mosley to potentially be let go? And then what do you think, if you think he's on the hot seat, it would take for him to just keep it? So, like, what are the general expectations? I think right now, winning that 7th seed game against the Atlanta Hawks and then getting a couple games off of Boston, I think that's a good spot. I don't think Mosley's getting fired anymore, or I never really did. And I don't think Weltman's moving on either. I think both those guys are coming back. But, I think it's interesting stuff. Crazy times in the NBA, and you don't want to see anybody lose their job. But it's a reality. It's a reality of the sport. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, Paolo Banchero played extremely well last night, as usual, as we've seen from him in the past. And Trae Young made a comment. Paolo is a really good player. He makes plays. He's going to make plays, and you've got to make it as tough as you can on him. But it's not going to be perfect. And I like this respect that Trae Young is giving Paolo Banchero. These guys have had some pretty great duels over the past handful of years, so that was awesome to see. This is something that I would have included in the post-game yesterday, but I went and did it before the post-game press conferences were available and some of the sounds and bites, so just wanted to mention that today. This was a great win. So how did the Orlando Magic essentially wrap up the 7th seed? Well, Boston winning at New York in overtime yesterday and playing Orlando tonight allows the Magic tonight to secure that 7th seed officially and home court in the play-in tournament. But right now, what puts them so far ahead? Well, since they beat Atlanta, in doing so, they secured a season split of the series. Okay, the next tiebreaker is division record, which they own with that win over Atlanta. This, in combination with the Bulls' loss to the Cavs, makes Orlando Magic's number for the 7th seed 1. So, essentially, they just really need one more win. And that could come tonight against the Celtics. Everything is falling out in line for them, and the 7th seed is essentially theirs. So that's great. Getting home court, everything like that, even though you probably would rather play the Cavs, maybe outside of the Celtics, doesn't matter. You're going to have to go through one of them eventually if you really wanted to make a run. So just play them and, let's just fall where they may, because at that point you can't avoid any of those teams. They're great teams. So. In other news, as I mentioned, the Osceola Magic take a 1-0 lead in the best-of-3 G League Finals against Stockton. Mac McClung balling out as usual. But it would have been nice to see him more this year, but this team has played 79 games so far, and we haven't really seen him in any more than like 2. So it's just not going to be something that we see, especially come playoff time. But great to see he's playing well. Maybe he'll be on another team, another G League team or affiliate next season. What else do we got? The preview for tonight, I think this team is fully healthy again, so that's a really good sign. I think they're going to take this game as a playoff game going forward. I don't really... I think they're just going to wrap it up, and then I don't really think they're going to try too hard in the next couple games. Don't want to give too much away to Atlanta. Again, give them more film to work with. So I think they're going to coast after trying to get a win on a back-to-back tonight. If you're gonna really push it, you might as well do it tonight. Last night, I think Franz had like 40 minutes. Paolo Banchero had 37 minutes. Wendell Carter Jr. had 37 minutes. He was also great last night too. So shout out again, Wendell Carter Jr. So I think they'll make a push here, and they'll try to get that game off the Celtics. I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but just thank you again. Thank you guys so much for the support. Appreciate it. I read all your guys' comments, so love to see all that sort of stuff and the support. Shout out to the 6% of the subscribers from Germany. Always great to see that number, and that's pretty awesome. And shout out to Wagner Bros, Interest in the Silva for all of that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.